This episode of the Cab Grand Rising Show is brought to you by Autochthonous Assembly, where the real work gets done. For the first-time visitors who may be wondering who Autochthonous Assembly is, Autochthonous Assembly, or A2 for short, is a gathering of minds that do the work. A2 is a non-profit organization dedicated to raising up Indigenous Americans' voices by using genealogy, also known as family history or family tree. Genealogy is the study of families and the tracing of their lineages in history. Genealogists use oral interviews, historical records, genetic analysis, and other records to obtain information about a family and to demonstrate kinship and pedigrees of its members. Autochthonous Assembly's core values are the foundation of its company, essential to its success, and serves as the lens through which it evaluates every business decision. The core values are integrity, know and do what is right, respect, treating others the way you want to be treated, responsibility, embrace opportunities to contribute, servant leadership, serve the common good. Along with a key emphasis on genealogy, A2 is also committed to providing our communities with information and access to available grants and funding through the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the United States Department of Agriculture, the Farm Service Agency, and other departments and agencies that offer programs to help them become self-sufficient. Building on a strong community reputation, Autochthonous Assembly continues to strengthen the growth of the relationship and development of our communities. Peace and Grand Rising.
Warning, warning, warning. Hard hats, pickaxe, shovels, boots required.
one. Grand Rising, everyone. Grand Rising. Peace, peace, peace. Hope all is well. How's everyone doing on the panel this rising?
Great. How you doing?
Besides what the children did, other than that, I'm great.
Got to be more careful.
Grand Rising, everybody. All is fairly well on this end. Hope everybody else is doing all right.
Peace, peace, Grand Rising, y'all. Peace to the chats.
It was just having a community conversation over a lot of the information that we went over the time and things that we have found out. We can continue the conversation that we was having. If anybody remember where we left off at.
Okay, yeah. I was just trying to give a rundown to some information that we got from former Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney. She on Twitter posted a link to a video that was describing the situation as we know it now with the epidemic that everyone's just talking about, that we can't really talk about in some places, if you get what I'm saying.
Right.
So the numbers have been revised down, and now you're seeing a death toll that is at or below the numbers of essentially the same numbers that you would have during the flu season, which is on one hand encouraging that we've been able to not get as many people that sick, but also a little disturbing in that we've had this huge crackdown over essentially what didn't constitute this kind of a crackdown. And a whole lot of corporations and government entities, I'll say, have not only made off with a lot of our money, but they've also put a lot of people out of work, possibly for the long term.
Facts.
Because none of us know what the job market's going to look like once we go back to work. Once non-essential travel is okayed again. I have a grandmother that is elderly and survived a stroke, so she's not able to get around as well as she would like, and so I have to I'm on the road now. I have to constantly drive around and get things for her. I try to get her enough supplies for her to last for a while, but I gotta go and help her out around her apartment as well because she can't get around. So, but and for anybody that's had to drive around recently, you'll notice there's not nearly as much traffic as you normally see.
Right.
Because all non-essential travel is supposed to be at least discouraged, if not outright banned by law. So once we are able to go back to work and to do things as we have been doing, who knows what the job market's going to look like? We don't know how many people who've gotten, however many people have filed for unemployment, millions of people at this point. We don't know if all those people will be called back to work or if they just have to find another job. And this affects us greatly in our community because a lot of us do work for corporations, large and small. So it's going to be really tough for us. And when you look back on this in retrospect, as the states begin allowing people to go back to work and back to what they were doing, we have to figure out as a community how to make sure that we're not only able to make it through to the other side and still take care of ourselves and our families, but also how do we avoid this happening again? Because one of the things they've been telling us as well in some of the White House press briefings is that they suspect, at least some of the physicians that are in the task force, expect this to become a seasonal thing. But we're gonna lock down like this every year or twice a year even. This isn't feasible. And I know a lot of people by this point, sometime this week have gotten, if they're not supposed to get sometime in the next few days, business days at least, that stimulus check, the $1,200 for every adult, the $500 for every child under 17. Yeah, that helps a few people, but that's not something we can subsist off of. That money won't even last a week for most people. And we have to, as a community, start thinking about how we deal with this, because it seems like, at least the indicators that I'm seeing, watching these press briefings and looking at the other things that are coming out of the World Health Organization, the CDC, and all these other entities, this is going to be something that's with us for a long time, if certain people can help it. And you're not going to hear me minimize the virus. You're not going to hear me say it's fake. But what I am going to say is it's been exaggerated, grossly exaggerated. And I can verify that people are dying of other illnesses, heart attack, stroke, diabetes, and so forth. And those deaths are being attributed to this in an attempt to inflate the numbers. So we have some serious stuff to look at with this, and we have some serious things to discuss as about how we move forward. Another thing I found, and I'll be quick about this, I don't want to take up too much time. Another thing that I was informed about yesterday at the White House press briefing was that the government and the CDC plan to establish what they call, and Nosala and I were looking at this last night, sentinel surveillance sites.
One more time, sir. Sentinel
surveillance sites. Sounds pretty scary, doesn't it? These are. I'm sorry.
Didn't we get introduced to Sentinel in the 80s?
Yes, in the 80s and the 90s, they started what they're calling the Sentinel surveillance, where they're essentially monitoring various aspects and various demographics in the neighborhood to find trends in things. They don't just do it for medical issues; they do it for financial issues. They do it for measuring jobs and income and spending and things like that. But this is a track and trace program. Now, they're using things, like you said, Bones, that we've been dealing with since the 80s and the 90s, that we've at this point become used to, but they're going to start tracking cases that come up in, and this comes straight from Dr. Birx on the White House coronavirus task force. She said that they were going to target nursing homes, that they're going to target inner city clinics in low-income areas, and that they were going to target indigenous populations. She said that on in the briefing live on television.
Who said this?
Dr. Birx.
And they were targeting what now?
They're targeting for the Sentinel surveillance sites. They're targeting nursing homes, so all elderly homes, retirement homes, things like that. They are targeting inner city clinics. So if you go to any clinic's office, urgent care, something like that, in large metropolitan areas, they're targeting those areas, and they're targeting indigenous populations. They said, that's a quote. So and Nosala and I were talking about this yesterday. It's almost amusing that they're still conflating the inner city, the urban. You know what that word urban means? The urban Indian with the Native American. It's still all referred to as the same thing. They're still grouping them the same.
Are they in the urban areas as much as we are? I don't usually see so I guess would be so-called. I don't know. Native
Right.
American, maybe the reservation.
Right.
I'm
Indians,
So-
I don't know what they call it.
The link to the Sentinel program I'm dropping in the chat.
Got
Thank
it.
you, bro.
Proof is not a
And
problem.
you can definitely even away from the what we post, Google, Yahoo, whatever you use, search Sentinel surveillance, and you'll get some .govs, some official
This is government stuff.
websites to show you what this is. It's not like an article from a tabloid website. So
Yeah, this isn't theory. This what I'm telling you. You can if you can go to YouTube and find it. The White House press briefing from yesterday.
Facts.
Like, this isn't conspiracy theory. This isn't speculation. This is I'm quoting them verbatim. This is what they were talking about.
And we always said that before. People be worried about the wrong things. It's the stuff that they release right in front of your face that people don't
Come on,
pay
man.
attention to.
Exactly.
This is stuff
Exactly.
you just got to open your eyes. I mean, one day you're gonna have to open your eyes and and research something.
Right.
So,
And you don't have to go that far to find the proof that some of this stuff is going on, right?
Oh no, this was right on the surface. I found those two
Yeah.
definitions. What was the other one? The one that it was previously indexed as.
It was
Hold on, let me check real quick. It was
okay.
So right now we have Sentinel surveillance since 1995, and that other one, my bad, y'all, was previous indexing was population surveillance from 83 to 94.
Mm-hmm.
So that's from NIH.gov.
See, the government finds demographics, and this is part of why, as important as the census already is, this is why the government places even more emphasis on it, because populations and their demographics are of key value to the government, because that's how it understands what the population looks like and how to control it. Whether you look at it as a passive or as an aggressive thing. So if you go to a clinic, or if you're in a nursing home, or if you're on a reservation even, and you're believed to have the virus, then they're going to take certain steps to make sure that you're quarantined. So the quarantine thing isn't going to leave us for a long time. Most people may be able to move about a bit more freely, but for anybody that's alleged to be sick, they're saying that you're going to have to stay home. You're not going to be able to have a cold and to be fighting, the flu or something and go into work. No, they're stressing that corporations and small businesses make arrangements with their employees to either give them PTO or allow them to telework if they have any sign of being ill. Like that's not even going to be a thing you can just tough it through. They want you to stay in and be quarantined if you don't feel well, which some of that makes sense, but but there's a lot of stuff that goes along with this idea of the Sentinel surveillance that I think are of concern. I just kind of want to stress to you guys real quick. Bill Gates last week, and this is with the World Health Organization, who echoed his sentiment on this. And there's a reason why those two are always in agreement, but that's for another time. They both said that, and also some world leaders have said that they believe that it's going to be necessary as people go back to work. It's going to be necessary for people to be identified and possibly extracted from their homes if they are with families and they end up being suspected of having the virus. So in other words, government entities want to, not just here but around the world, want to be able, or are at least suggesting that they should be able to go into your home if they suspect you to be ill, extract you from your home, quarantine you in a separate area, and then have the family continue to quarantine for 2 weeks so that as a precaution in case they start to show symptoms. And by the way, the Sentinel surveillance sites that they're setting up are on the lookout for what Dr. Birch said as It was pre-symptomatic or asymptomatic. So even if you have the virus and you don't show symptoms, didn't they say that the virus takes up to 14, 28 days to manifest itself? So if you allegedly have the virus, even if you don't have symptoms,
28 days. That just gave me a bad flash.
Sounds awful lot like a very bad survival horror movie, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's just a little close. Just a little close.
Yeah.
Just a little subtle nuances.
Yeah.
Like the whole title.
Right. But the thing that's creepy about this, I think.
Yes, Gabrielle, I can hear you.
Yeah.
You're breaking up a little bit though.
Yeah.
The first some of these windows.
Yes, because you probably been locking on the air.
Yeah. The first thing that I think set up red flag off for me. That's
nope.
Kind of the same.
Yep. This is Jafar goes to the optometrist. What's going on here? Can I see the first one again? No, hold on. Gabrielle, you got to go out and come back in.
But yeah, the thing I wanted to point out with that caught my attention was one that she was talking about inner city clinics and indigenous populations. Like the terminology just it struck me. Indigenous population, we need to go on the reservation. Kind of. It's still breaking up a little bit. It's still breaking up a bit.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. Get out of here.
I got definitions.
Nope. Your complaints are falling on the deaf ears right now.
But yeah.
Stop hanging out with Wile E. Coyote in that Batman suit, Gabrielle.
But the other thing that I found disturbing was the fact that they said, asymptomatic and pre-symptomatic people. So you don't even necessarily have to be sick or to feel sick. If you're just accused of having it, they're going to start trying to remove you from other people.
Wow. Yeah.
Or at the very least trace your location and where you go.
Okay, can y'all hear me now?
You're loud and clear, Gabrielle.
All right. I got some definitions.
What? You probably like 5 minutes late, ain't you?
No, okay.
You've been mic checking for 10 minutes.
Man, okay.
So when we open the show now, let me think.
Okay, so there are 3 types of surveillance. The 2 most primary types of surveillance is passive and active. Passive surveillance, and this is how it's categorized. I'm just going to read what it says. I'm not going to put my own.
Hold on, Gabrielle. Hold on before you read it. Buckle up.
And yes, that is enough warning. It will be, you're liable now. You all are liable. That was enough.
Right. Passive disease surveillance begins with healthcare providers and laboratories initiating the reporting to states or local officials. Reportable diseases are submitted on a case-by-case basis based on a published list of conditions. Specifically, in Massachusetts, this is used for an example. In Massachusetts, there are approximately 90 reportable conditions ranging from common infections, i.e. chlamydia, Lyme disease, to rare diseases, i.e. measles and typhoid fever. Most of the disease surveillance in Massachusetts is passive. Now there's active surveillance. Active disease surveillance is when state or local officials actively search for information by contacting healthcare providers, laboratories, schools, nursing homes, workplaces, etc. For example, during a cluster investigation of E. coli 0157:H7, epidemiologists might call pediatric nephrologists in the state to find out whether the clinician has treated any patients having hemolytic uremic syndrome, HUS, which could result from infection with this organism. Now, those are the two main ones. The third surveillance is called other. Now, other has risk factor, outbreak, sentinel, syndromic. Risk factor surveillance might be used to identify an increased risk of illness due to specific environmental, behavioral, or biological elements. For example, the state health department traps mosquitoes every summer and tests them for West Nile virus and Eastern equine encephalitis, EEE, virus to determine if there is a potential risk to humans in a particular location. Outbreak surveillance. Outbreak surveillance is mostly active and is used to find, let me repeat that. Outbreak surveillance is mostly active and used to find additional cases to pinpoint the source of the outbreak. This includes finding and interviewing individuals that contracted the disease to detect commonalities. Sentinel surveillance. Sentinel surveillance is useful when the goal is to collect information on disease trends rather than individual cases. For example, a network of healthcare providers or hospitals is recruited to regularly report specified health events or diseases that disproportionately affect specific populations or communities. Syndromic surveillance might be used to identify illness clusters early, even before diagnosis, or confirm and report, or even before diagnoses are confirmed and reported, in order to mobilize a rapid response. Syndromic surveillance programs define various kinds of syndromes, such as respiratory illness or gastrointestinal illness.
Is it me, or from the definitions of them, it seemed to me we just went through like all them stages. Passive is the voluntary isolation and quarantine. You know, they ain't going out, they ain't looking, just they're telling everybody just, stay in. Active is once they had the hotlines and tell people, if you see people not following the voluntary rules, you can report them. And now they're doing the sentinel part now.
Exactly. That's exactly right. We've gone through the whole procession of this.
Infectious disease surveillance today. A disease surveillance system has many components that allow public health officials to monitor the occurrence and spread of disease so that they can take action, control the disease, reduce morbidity, illness, and mortality, death.
Morbidity.
Morbidity. Okay, they messing around with the dictionary. I mean, I've read many words in the dictionary, but
that's a health term. You don't get it.
Yeah,
you got mortality rates, morbidity rates, and,
right?
Yeah. Actually, Copper, you were gonna get a definition of morbidity. My bad. I don't know.
I was gonna say, i.e., deadliness. Morbid.
Yeah.
Essentially being a synonym of, death and such.
Yeah.
But
straight up, yes.
But we've gone through every iteration of this, and so when they say they're going to take action, what does that mean? That's a valid question. I'm not taking an accusatory stance on the government with this. I'm just asking a question, like most people would ask a question when they say they're going to take action, because that's a very vague phrase. We're going to take action. What does that action mean? Well, we've already seen what that action is, and it may be. Let's say if you got Columbus, Ohio. I'm just thinking of a large city. And you have, everybody goes back to work and things are kind of sort of normal. You're still seeing the social distancing. You still see a couple people here and there walking around with masks and such. But people are more or less able to kind of, go to work and go places they need to go. Stores aren't closing at like 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, things like that. But then you have 2 or 3 people, maybe even 5 or so, that show up at a clinic in the downtown area that are diagnosed and have it. So now you're going to start seeing maybe a localized version of what we just saw the whole nation go through. Now, and that's an educated guess. That's just me looking at what they've done, placing it in the confines of what they're talking about doing. It could be worse than that. I don't know. But that's why I'm asking the question.
But look at sentinel surveillance. Sentinel surveillance shows that that's the direction that it's going. Because once it gets to sentinel surveillance, they're not looking at individual data anymore. They're looking at area data. So now you can be like, okay, just like you said, in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, there'd probably be like a district where there's an infection. So everybody else can move around, but if you're in this area code, that's the infection area code. That's the lockdown. And I'm not saying it as a conspiracy or nothing like that. No, this is just a procedure, the medical procedure on how they treat this. And you can actually see, okay, following the steps and having the information on how they go about it, you can see where it's going.
Exactly.
Because again, the needs of the many will always outweigh the needs of the few. If there's only a small part of the population that's infected, they're not going to stop the whole population. They're just going to isolate the smaller area. What you do with an infection, you isolate it, don't you? Even in your body, if you're infected, don't the doctors isolate that infection first before you can treat it? Mic check 1 2.
1 2 1 2. I can hear you.
Yeah, Copper, I can see it going that way. Not saying that it will, but I can see it going that way.
Definitely plausible, though.
I mean, think about it. It's part of the press conference.
Yeah, I mean, if they're willing to tell us on live TV that this is what they plan on doing, we kind of have to take them at their word, don't we?
Right. Yeah. That's where you have to have the responsibility to inform yourself on what they're talking about. So now you know exactly what they're talking about. And again, we're not saying this as, oh, government is taking over, that's why they're doing this. No. I mean, realistically, if you're going to treat an infection, this is how you would eventually do it. You got gangrene in your toe. Don't they just isolate that toe and remove the toe before it gets so infectious that you end up losing the whole leg?
Mm-hmm. You ain't shot me in my pinky toe.
But that makes clinical sense, because especially if you've done any work in nursing or anything like that, if you have an abscess, to Bones' point, you don't want that infection to get into your bloodstream and freely go about the highway of blood circulation in your body, because it could end up anywhere. Now you got complications in other organs. and possibly organ failure in unrelated areas like the heart. And so now you got a life-threatening illness where, you know, you may just have needed to get a tooth extraction. So if you can isolate, especially as with this communicable as this disease is supposed to be, it could, and how interconnected the country is as well, because this whole thing seems to have exploited just how global our stance has become as a society. Because it's nothing for me to go buy a plane ticket and go to Sri Lanka before all of this happened. There was nothing stopping me from getting on a plane, leaving southeastern Virginia, and going all the way to Sri Lanka. Probably take about a day or so travel. And I'm there with people literally halfway around the world. And so if we open things back up and people begin moving about the state or the country or the world, when these kinds of things pop up again, we have to lock it down to isolate it. And there's some degree of where the lockdown makes sense as a precaution. Now you get into some weird territory when because part of the thing we were talking about with the video that Dr. McKinney shared was that a pastor was having a drive-in church service, and police showed up and said that everybody had to leave. That they wouldn't write a citation for anybody that was there unless they refused to leave. And when the pastor took issue with it, the officer said that their rights were revoked. This is in America in 2020. The police are telling you your rights are revoked. First Amendment, Second Amendment, any constitutional rights you have are superseded because lockdown. So we're getting into a really weird, hazy area with that. Because like I said, I mean, some of it makes common sense to keep people from dying of the plague. I mean, when you look at the way Italy, for example, when plagues would hit Europe in the Middle Ages, one of the things that they developed in Italy early on was quarantine. I forget what the name of starts with a P. I forget what the name of the island was, but there's an island there in Italy where they would send anybody that had the plague to that island for quarantine. You stayed away from the general population. You went there if you were sick. And that was part of how they controlled the spread of the plague. Same idea applies here. They've been doing this for hundreds of years. As a matter of fact, if you look at the things we've been told to do, stay 6 feet away from the next individual, no public gatherings, things like that, no non-essential travel, stay at home. Like these same orders were written up for people when plagues would come through in the 1500s. This stuff is hundreds of years old, the things that we've been doing. So some of it makes sense, but when you start punishing people for going, let's say, to the beach. Let's say you want to go to the beach and fish. You're not around anybody, you're there by yourself. You can't go fish. The ocean's closed. You can't take your boat. If you got a boat, you can't go out to the river and sit out on your boat by yourself. What danger are you to anybody else? This is where we get into a brush up against people's constitutional rights. And that's a slippery slope once you start allowing that to happen. So that's another thing we want to kind of be mindful of, is that we're not trading our rights for the security of feeling safe, that we're not going to get the virus. Because I found an article and I shared it with the panel a few days ago. I wasn't able to get on the show at the time, but I did share the article. This lady she has an immunodeficiency. She's an artificially low, unusually low. I won't say artificial. Unusually low T cell count. So she's susceptible to any illness she gets. When this all got announced, she went on voluntary lockdown and kept her husband in a separate room because of her illness, because of her pre-existing condition, I'll say. But, you know, she didn't go anywhere. She didn't go outside. She didn't, you know, brush up against people. She wasn't avoiding the social distancing and all of that. She stayed home like they told you to do. But she ordered some food and it got delivered, and she didn't wash her hands when she picked it up. And the individual that delivered the food, even though there was a contactless encounter, the person dropped the food off, left, sent her an email, and she went and picked it up at the door after the individual left. This individual ended up being diagnosed with coronavirus. So she got coronavirus, even though she didn't go anywhere. So if you think that you're going to successfully trade your freedom for security, you will have neither. Just wanted to point that out.
Found another link.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, Copper, because this is where we as people have to be careful, because we are doing this to ourselves. Mm-hmm. How we react to this, how we view it, and what we do will dictate what happens moving forward. Cause and effect. Facts. Meaning, if we become a society to where we start turning on each other over perceptions, over so-called health, what is the government's first responsibility? To protect the citizens, right? And protect the citizens from foreign threats and domestic. So if we allow ourselves to be triggered and act unruly and foolishly, by default, wouldn't that be us putting ourselves in further lockdown?
It would. There are some lessons that we have to learn from what we're going through right now. And one of those lessons is, like Bone said, you know, we have to not throw away our freedom because we want to act stupid. Because we want to go at each other or be suspicious of each other. Because when you look around, when you look on social media, look at the discourse. Look at what people are talking about. They don't trust each other. A lot of people don't even trust themselves. And you've got a nation that at this point has turned upside down. You can't congregate the fellowship for religion, any religion. I mean, they've been picking on the Christians quite a bit in the news, but any religion. I mean, mosque isn't assembling. The Buddhists aren't getting together. Everybody's staying separate. You can't do that, but liquor stores open. Yeah. Not only is it open, it's essential. because they don't want to make the depression rate and the suicide rate even higher than it probably will be in a long-term lockdown situation. Because even now, as they're talking about going back to work, it's still up to the governors to decide how long it's going to be. But you got to ask yourself now, like I was saying earlier, how do we handle this going forward? Are we going to continue to be this paranoid of each other? Are we going to continue to be this suspicious? Are we going to take this stance of snitching on each other when we suspect somebody? You know, you're in line at a convenience store. Somebody coughs. You know, even if they cough into their arm, or you know, like they tell you to do, like the CDC has always told you to do. But now if somebody's coughing, you're looking at them like, wonder what he got. Wonder what she got.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, Copper, because I can speak to this truthfully. And there were a couple of people on the panel who got to witness it, that how dangerous this really is when people speculate and start a rumor. Just last week, I was in the store in my neighborhood, like I normally go every day, talking on the panel, talking to the people in the store, and people at the store let me know that there's a rumor that was going around that me and my children were infected with coronavirus. Now, this rumor is told to people amongst the neighborhood, but my household don't know. So you had people treating me and my family a particular way over a rumor. A rumor. So, yes, it gets dangerous. Because what happens if I didn't have the reputation in my community where someone would have came to me and was like, no, we know better than that. Our children at this man's house every day. It can be dangerous. That's why I say again, we have to be careful not to do this to each other and not to do it to ourselves. And it's kind of funny that we was on a panel and it went down just that simple. For anyone that was on the panel that day, am I making any of this up?
Nope.
Not at all.
Nope.
In real time, just that quick. A rumor.
Ask Pamela Hall if you need proof.
A rumor got me and my family treated a particular way that we knew nothing about.
Facts. And that is dangerous, especially if you know nothing about it. You being treated a certain way and nobody told you, nobody informed you until just so happens the store clerk let you know. This is why people backing up. Come on now.
Exactly. And now, just real quick, remember what I was saying about what the people at the World Health Organization and the CDC were suggesting, were proposing. If what they had proposed was actually in law and actually enforceable by the state and the federal government, Bones could have been picked up, possibly separated from his family for an indefinite amount of time as a mandatory quarantine. And then the rest of his family would have been told where they couldn't ask to see him physically. They couldn't go to see him. They couldn't have any physical contact with him. They would be separated from him for at least 2 weeks while they themselves were stuck in the house and quarantined. You can't go to the store. You can't go see anybody in your family or friends or anybody got an emergency. Can't have any interaction with anybody. Can't have anybody over. All because of a rumor now. When the government is telling you suspected, we're going after suspected cases, that's what they're talking about. Because when you go back and look at some of these press conferences from these states, like in California, they're incentivizing, they're paying the government now, the state government is paying people to tell them if they have individuals around them who appear to not be social distancing, who appear to be sick, who appear to be in any situation that they deem reasonable to remove them. And this just happened to Bones. Unfortunately, this wasn't law at that point because the people who made that rumor up could have very easily have gone to the government, state government, or local city government even, at that level.
What's even
and said,
worse, the individual doesn't know me and I don't know them. That's what even made it worse.
Exactly. It's anonymous.
I don't even know these people. That's why I say again, we got to be careful.
You know, I just learned 2 things. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep.
So, and I don't know if this just, this is that, okay, so I won't say that, but this is a duh moment for me. The flu. The flu is short for influenza. I just realized that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no, I just realized that. In my mind, the flu was the same as saying a cold. I did not realize until just now that the flu is short for influenza.
Mm-hmm.
Influenza is a disease. Just saying. And I was reading this Wikipedia link of public health surveillance that talks about all the things that fall under disease. Influenza, SARS, HIV, stroke, diabetes. And those all fall under public health surveillance. Just learn that.
The more you learn about virology and illnesses and different diseases, the more you start to see that a lot of these bacterial infections are the same. A lot of these viral infections are the same. They just use viral and bacterial to determine the kind of infection you have. But a lot of these illnesses, especially in the family of viruses, because remember, we're talking about coronavirus as if it's a singular thing. Coronavirus is a family of viruses.
Yes, it is.
And many of these have been around for a long time.
Yes,
So
it's SARS, and they decided not to say SARS because they did not want the public to panic. That's why you have the name that it has now. As a matter of fact, it almost didn't even have its name.
right, because Bones and I were talking about this a few days ago, that the base for what this thing is SARS, because that's how it behaves. It creates a what's the word I'm looking for? It creates a substance in the lungs that's almost like it calcifies. Fibrosis. It creates fibrosis in the lungs, which basically asphyxiates and suffocates the victim.
Can I read the definition to SARS on here?
Right?
Severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS. Severe acute respiratory syndrome is a viral respiratory disease of zoonotic origin that surfaced in the early 2000s, caused by severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus. The first identified. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, just zoonotic basically means it comes from an animal. Like in the case of SARS, if I remember correctly, I'm probably reading ahead of you on this one, Miss Gabby, so I apologize. But this comes from bats. If you look at the movie Contagion, that's referring to this. And if you look at where they said the virus originated, it was in bats. That's why the story when COVID-19 hit, they said that the Chinese government attributed it to bats and said it come from people that were eating some soup made out of bats that came from a wet market, which we know is nonsense. But that's why it was attributed to that, because this type of virus originates in that animal. I'm sorry, go ahead, Scab.
Oh no. Sorry. Okay. The first identified strain of the SARS coronavirus species, severe acute respiratory syndrome related coronavirus. The syndrome caused the 2002 through 2004 SARS outbreak. In late 2017, Chinese scientists traced the virus through the intermediary of civets to cave-dwelling horseshoe bats in Wuhan province. No cases of the first SARS-CoV virus has been reported worldwide since 2004. In 2019, a related virus strain, severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2, SARS-CoV-2, was discovered. This new strain causes COVID-19, a disease which brought about an ongoing 2019 through 2020 coronavirus pandemic.
Hold it right there for a second. SARS causes COVID. Remember that. It's sort of like there's no difference than the HIV and AIDS.
And that, speaking of which, is the other component to COVID-19. Part of why they were saying that it was so deadly once it was contracted is because of the immuno inhibitor that this virus tends to express, which mimics HIV. So depending on what kind of expression you have in the virus when it gets into your system, it's either going to act as HIV and weaken your immune system to make you susceptible to other things, or it's going to try to act like SARS up front and get into your lungs. But now the problem is, let's say if you find you get the illness early and you get it treated early, you can recover from the SARS piece of it. But if you get reinfected and the HIV part hits you, now you're compromised even more so than you would be otherwise. At least that was what I got from a study that actually came from Wuhan after this thing broke out.
Okay. Signs and I'm gonna just read from the same Wikipedia link. Cool.
That's fine.
Signs and symptoms. Signs and symptoms are flu-like symptoms and may include fever, mucal pain, lethargy, cough, sore throat, and other non-specific symptoms. The only symptom common to all patients appears to be a fever of 38 degrees Celsius or 100 degrees Fahrenheit. SARS may eventually lead to shortness of breath and pneumonia, either direct viral pneumonia or secondary bacterial pneumonia. The average incubation period of SARS is 4 to 6 days, although rarely it could be as short as 1 day or as long as 14 days. Transmissions. The primary route of transmissions for SARS-CoV is contact with the mucous membranes with respiratory droplets or fomites. While diarrhea is common in people with SARS, the fecal-oral route does not appear to be a common mode of transmission. The basic reproduction number of SARS-CoV-RO ranges from 2 to 4 depending on different analyses. Control measures introduced on April 2003 reduced the R to 0.4. Diagnosis. SARS-CoV may be suspected in a patient who has any of the symptoms, including a fever of 38 degrees Celsius, 100 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, and either a history of contact, sexual or casual, with someone with a diagnosis of SARS within the last 10 days, or travel to any of the regions identified by the World Health Organization WHO as areas with recent local transmissions of SARS. For a case to be considered probable, a chest X-ray must be positive for atypical pneumonia or respiratory distress syndrome. The WHO has added the category of laboratory confirmed SARS for patients who would otherwise be considered probable, but who have yet to had a positive chest X-ray changes, but have tested positive for SARS based on one of the approved tests. ELSA immunofluorescence, or PCR. The appearance of SARS-CoV in chest X-rays is not always uniform, but generally appears as an abnormality. There you go. I can't get it right today either. With patchy infiltrates. With patchy infiltrates. Prevention. There is no vaccine for SARS, although Dr. Anthony Fauci mentioned that the CDC developed one and placed it in the U.S. national stockpile. Clinical isolation and quarantine remain the most effective means to prevent the spread of SARS.
Let me stop you right there, Ms. Gavin. Let me stop you right there. This point needs to be made. If y'all don't remember anything else I say today, remember this. They told you with SARS there was no viable vaccine. You are hearing very prominent people in technology, in science, and in medicine who have been for months and will continue to say that people will not be able to go back to normal until there is a mass vaccination against this. If this is in the same family of viruses that SARS is, and there's no viable vaccine for it. They also said that that one wasn't necessary for this because people were getting reinfected at like a 30% rate. So if you recover from, if you get a virus and you recover from it, you've naturally built, your body has built an immunity to it, built antibodies to fight off the virus. So if you encounter it again, it's far less likely that you'll be reinfected, especially if it's the same strain. But people were going back home. This is in Wuhan when this first started. People were going back home and getting reinfected. A virus can't fix that. Well, I'm sorry, a vaccine can't fix that. The vaccine, by definition, a vaccine is giving you a weakened form of the virus, introducing it into your bloodstream so that your blood cells are able to build antibodies to it. So that way, if you encounter an actual version of the virus, your blood cells will, your T cells rather, your white blood cells, will identify it and destroy it. That's the science of how vaccines work. I am not necessarily an anti-vaxxer. I get how the science works, makes sense. But you all have to understand that they're pushing a rushed vaccine for this. And they're at least going to make the case. I don't know if it's going to happen, but they're at least going to make the case that there be a mass vaccination for COVID-19, that they want everybody to get it, and they want to trace people who have it and who don't. This is a proposal that's come from several people, again, including people from the World Health Organization. So when Ms. Gabby read there that there was no viable vaccine for it, that one had been created but it wasn't really useful, what are they going to suggest that you get when all of this is over with? Keep that in the back of your mind. Go ahead, Ms. Gabby. I just wanted to point that out because that's a very important point in terms of what's coming.
Okay. There is no vaccine for SARS, although Dr. Anthony Fauci, Anthony Stephen Fauci is an American physician and immunologist who has served as the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, NIAID, since 1984. Since January 2020, he has been one of the lead members of the Trump administration, has been one of the lead members of the Trump administration White House Coronavirus Task Force addressing the 2019-2020 coronavirus pandemic in the United States. He mentioned that the CDC developed one and placed it in the U.S. national stockpile. Clinical isolation and quarantine remain the most effective means to prevent the spread of SARS. Other preventative measures include hand washing with soap and water or use of alcohol-based hand sanitizer, disinfection of surfaces of fomites to remove viruses, and fomites or inanimate object surfaces, counters, door handles, doors, stuff like that. Avoiding contact with bodily fluids, washing the personal items of someone with SARS in hot soapy water, eating utensils, dishes, bedding, etc., keeping children with symptoms home from school, simple hygiene measures, isolating oneself as much as possible to minimize the chances of transmission of the virus. Many public health interventions were made to try to control the spread of the disease, which is mainly spread through respiratory droplets in the air. These interventions include early detection of the disease, isolation of people who are infected, droplets and contact precautions, and the use of personal protective equipment, PPE, including mask and isolation gowns. Studies done during the outbreak found that for medical professionals, wearing any type of mask compared to wearing any type of mask compared to none could reduce the chances of getting sick by 80%. A screening process was also put in place at airports to monitor air travel to and from affected countries. SARS-CoV is most infectious in severely ill patients, which usually occurs during the second week of illness. This displayed infectious period meant that quarantine was highly effective. People who were isolated before day 5 of their illness rarely transmitted the disease to others. Although no cases have been identified since 2004, the CDC was still working to make federal and local rapid response guidelines and recommendations in the event of a reappearance of the virus as of 2017. I want to add something. You know that saying? Well, okay, so this is the saying that I grew up with, and it still sticks with me. You're more contagious when you're getting better than you are when you're actually sick. So in my mind, when they're saying, you know, people who find out they're sick and they isolate themselves, when they start to get better in that second week, that's when they're more contagious because they're getting better, and that the virus is basically trying to live, right?
It's trying to spread itself, and also the carrier is more likely to interact with others because he or she doesn't feel as sick.
Right. Because when you're down, you're down.
Right. Also, and a lot of people a lot of people have been told, you know, like let's say if you get the flu or something, that you're most with the common cold, you're most contagious in the beginning, the first like 24 to 48 hours, than you are for the rest of the time you might have it. Viruses work a little different. Viruses are not the same as bacteria. They're not living organisms the same way bacteria is. So the nature of how you fight it has to be different, which is why you can't just use antibiotics to get rid of this thing. It's not going to work. But take note also, Dr. Fauci, like you said, is in the task force, right? Mm-hmm. Same guy that was talking about the vaccine for the last bug. Ironically enough, well, not so much, is the guy that is going to be the authority, well, one of the big authorities on whether or not you get the vaccine for this bug. That's not a coincidence. I'm not gonna say anything else. I'm just gonna say that's not a coincidence.
When we read treatment,
Please.
treatment. As SARS is a viral disease, antibiotics do not have direct effect, but may be used against bacterial secondary infection. Treatment of SARS is mainly supportive with antipyretes. Antipyretes is a substance that reduces fever. Antipyretes causes the hypothalamus to override as prostaglandin induce increase in temperature. The body then works to lower the temperature, which results in reduction in fever. Okay. Supplemental oxygen and mechanical ventilation as needed. Antiviral medications are used, as well as high doses of steroids to reduce swelling in the lungs. People with SARS-CoV must be isolated, preferably in negative pressure rooms, with complete barrier nursing precautions taken for any necessary contact with these patients to limit the chances of medical personnel getting infected with SARS. In certain cases, natural ventilation by opening doors and windows are documented to help decreasing indoor concentration of virus particles. Some of the more serious damage caused by SARS may be due to the body's own immune system reacting in what is known as cytokine storm. Cytokine release syndrome, CRS, or cytokine storm syndrome is a form of systematic inflammatory response syndrome, SIRS, that can be triggered by a variety of factors such as infections and certain drugs. It occurs when large number of white blood cells are activated and release inflammatory cytokines, which in turn activate yet more white blood cells. CRS is also an adverse effect of some monoclonal antibody drugs, as well as adoptive T cell therapies. Severe cases have been called cytokine storms when occurring as a result of drug administration. It is also known as an infusion reaction. Volunteering to read. As of 2020, there is no cure or protective vaccine for SARS that has been shown to be both safe and effective in humans. According to research papers published in 2005 and 2006, the identification and development of novel vaccines and medicines to treat SARS is a priority for governments and public health agencies around the world. In early 2004, an early clinical trial on volunteers was planned. Prognosis. Several consequent reports from China on some recovered SARS patients showed severe long-time sequelae. Sequela is a pathological condition resulting from a disease, injury, therapy, or other trauma. Typically, a sequela is a chronic condition that is a complication which follows a more acute condition. It is different from, but is a consequence of, the first condition. The most typical disease include, among other things, pulmonary, pulmonary fibrosis, osteoporosis, and femoral necrosis. which have led in some cases to the complete loss of workability or even self-care ability of peoples who have recovered from SARS. As a result of quarantine procedures, some of the post-SARS patients have been documented as suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome, PTSD, and major depressive disorder. Y'all still there? Okay, I'm gonna keep reading. Epidemiology. SARS was a relative rare disease. At the end of the epidemic in June 2003, the incidence was 8,422 cases with a case fatality rate of 11%. The case fatality rate ranges from 0 to 50%, depending on the age group of the patient. Patients under 24 were least likely to die, less than 1%. Those 65 and older were most likely to die, over 55%. As with MERS and COVID-19, SARS resulted in significantly more deaths of males than females. Probable cases of SARS by country or region from November 1st, 2002 to July 31st, 2003. In China, cases 5,327, deaths 349. Hong Kong, 1,755, deaths 299. Taiwan, 346, deaths 73. Canada, 251 cases, deaths 43. Singapore, 238 cases, deaths 33. Vietnam, 63 cases, deaths 5. United States, 27 cases, deaths 0. Philippines, 14 cases, deaths 2. Thailand, 9 cases, deaths 2. Germany, 9 cases, deaths 0. Mongolia, 9 cases, deaths 0. France, 7 cases, deaths 1. Australia, 6 cases, deaths 0. Malaysia, 5 cases, deaths 2. Sweden, 5 cases, deaths 0. United Kingdom, 4 cases, deaths 0. Italy, 4 cases, deaths 0. India, 3 cases, deaths 0. South Korea, 3 cases, deaths 0. Indonesia, 2 cases, deaths 0. South Africa, 1 case, death 1. Kuwait, 1 case, deaths 0. Ireland, 1 case, death 0. Macau, 1 case, deaths 0. New Zealand, 1 case, deaths 0. Romania, 1 case, deaths 0. Russia, 1 case, deaths 0. Spain, 1 case, deaths 0. Switzerland, 1 case, deaths 0. Total, including China, 2,769 cases, and total, including China, deaths 454. Total territories, total 29 territories, 8,096. The deaths in those territories, 774, which I guess equals a total percentage of 9.6%. You want me to read the 1, 2? Okay, it's got 3 paragraphs left. When we finish reading that?
Yeah, you can, because it's just information on what it is, and it's needed information in a sense.
Gotcha.
So you can separate from all the noise.
Yeah.
All the distractions that's dealing with this.
And again, the
speculation.
You're right. The causes that I read from were from what they put from November 1st, 2002 to July 31st, 2003. That also aligns with the timeline of flu season, right?
If I remember correctly, yes.
So out of a total of 8,096 cases, out of those almost, a little over 8,000 people, only 774 people actually died from that. Okay, outbreak.
By the numbers, yes.
Right, by the numbers they produce, yes. Outbreak in South China. The viral outbreak can be genetically traced to a colony of cave-dwelling horseshoe bats in China's Yunnan province. The SARS epidemic appears to have started in Guangdong province, China, in November 2002, where the first case was reported that same month. The patient, a farmer from Shandai, Boshan, Guangdong, was treated in the First People's Hospital of Foshan. The patient died soon after, and no definite diagnosis was made on his cause of death. Despite taking some action to control it, Chinese government officials did not inform the World Health Organization of the outbreak until February 2003. So that's a year later. This lack of openness caused delays in efforts to control the epidemic, resulting in criticism of the People's Republic of China from the international community. China officially apologized for early slowness in dealing with the SARS epidemic. The outbreak first appeared on November 27th, 2002, when Canada's Global Public Health Intelligence Network, GPHIN, an electronic warning system that is part of the World Health Organization's Global Outbreak Alert and Response Network, picked up reports of a flu outbreak in China through internet media monitoring and analysis, and sent them to the WHO. While GPHIN's capability had recently been upgraded to enable Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Russian, and Spanish translation, the system was limited to English or French in presenting this information. Thus, while the first reports of an unusual outbreak were in Chinese, an English report was not generated until January 21st, 2003. The first super spreader was admitted to the Sun Yat-sen Memorial Hospital in Guangzhou on July 31st, which soon spread the disease to nearby hospitals. Subsequent to this, the WHO requested information from Chinese authorities on 5 and 11 of December. Despite the success of the network in previous outbreaks of diseases, it did not receive intelligence until the media reports from China several months after the outbreak of SARS. Along with the second alert, WHO released the name definition as well as an activation of coordinated global outbreak response network that brought sensitive attention and contaminant procedures. By the time the WHO took action, over 500 deaths and an additional 2,000 cases had already occurred worldwide. In early April of 2003, after Yang pushed to report the danger to China, there appeared to be a change in official policy when SARS began to receive There appeared to be change in official policy when SARS began to receive a much greater prominence in official media. Some have directly attributed this to the death of American James Earl Salisbury. It was around this same time that Yang made accusations regarding the undercounting of cases in Beijing military hospitals. After intense pressure, Chinese officials allowed international officials to investigate the situation there. This revealed problems plaguing the aging mainland Chinese healthcare system, including increasing decentralization, red tape, and inadequate communication. Many healthcare workers in the affected nations risked and lost their lives by treating patients and trying to contain the infection before ways to prevent infection were known. Spread to other regions. The epidemic reached the public spotlight in February 2003 when an American businessman traveling from China, Johnny Chen, became afflicted with pneumonia-like symptoms while on a flight to Singapore. The plane stopped in Hanoi, Vietnam, where the victim died in Hanoi French hospital. Several of the medical staff who treated him soon developed the same disease despite basic hospital procedures. Italian doctor Carlo Urbani identified the threat and communicated it to WHO and the Vietnamese government. He later succumbed to the disease. The severity of the symptoms and infection among hospital staff alarmed global health authorities, who were fearful of another emergent pneumonia epidemic. On the 12th of March 2003, the WHO issued a global alert, followed by a health alert by the United States Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Local transmission of SARS took place in Toronto, Ottawa, San Francisco, Ulaanbaatar, Manila, Singapore, Taiwan, Hanoi, and Hong Kong, whereas with China it spread in Guangdong, Jilin, Hebei, Hubei, Shanxi, Jinshu, Shanxi, Tianjin, and Inner Mongolia. I really apologize for all these words I'm botching up. I'll get better. Hong Kong. The disease spread in Hong Kong from Julan, a Guangdong doctor who was treating patients at Sun Yat-sen Memorial Hospital. He arrived in February and stayed on the 9th floor of the Metropole Hotel in Kowloon, infecting 16 of the hotel visitors. Those visitors traveled to Canada, Singapore, Taiwan, and Vietnam, spreading SARS to those locations. Another larger cluster of cases in Hong Kong centered on the Amoy Gardens housing estates. Its spread is suspected to have been facilitated by defects in its bathroom drainage system that allowed sewer gases, including virus particles, to vent into the room. Bathroom fan exhausted the gases and wind carried the contagion to adjacent downwind complexes. Concerned citizens in Hong Kong worried that information was not reaching people quickly enough and created a website called sosick.org, which eventually forced the Hong Kong government to provide information related to SARS in a timely manner. The first cohort of affected people were discharged from hospitals on the 29th of March 2003. Toronto. The first case of SARS in Toronto was identified on the 23rd of February 2003, beginning with an elderly woman, Quan Su Chu, returning from a trip to Hong Kong. Give me a second, sorry.
We're all still here.
Yeah, my bad. I had been
No,
looking
you
for
good.
my
You
phone
good.
all rising, and I heard it ringing, so I had to run and find it.
Hey! Don't do that.
I had to. I've been looking for it since like 6 o'clock. I'm just saying.
He's like, there it is.
Yeah, it's 9:47, and the only reason why I
3
found it was
hours
because somebody called.
later.
Don't tell nobody.
You just told everybody.
But I found it. Okay. So,
Now you can move about the cabin.
oh my god.
Oh my god.
Okay. Toronto.
That's a sham day.
Man, this is an everyday thing. I lose this phone every day. Put it on top of a container in the kitchen, leave it on top of the grill in the backyard. I just
Hey, Bones, remind me. Bones.
You know,
Remind me post show to make a joke. Yeah.
You silly.
You may or may not be amused by this joke. I'll continue. I'm sorry. My apologies.
No, you're fine. I'm just glad I found my phone.
Tangerines.
I'm just glad I found my phone. I don't think you know what it's like to call from your computer to your phone through Hangouts, hoping it's not on silent. I'm just saying. Okay. Okay, Toronto. The first case of SARS in Toronto was identified on the 23rd of February 2003, beginning with an elderly woman, Kwan Soo Chu, returning from a trip to Hong Kong. The virus killed her on March 5th and eventually infected 257 individuals in the province of Ontario. The trajectory, man, hold on. The trajectory of this outbreak is typically divided into two phases. The first centering around her son. I don't want to mess this name up. Tusi Chi Kwa, who infected other patients at the Scarborough Grace Hospital and died on March 13th. Wow. The second major wave of cases was clustered around accidental exposure among patients, visitors, and staff within the North York General Hospital. The WHO officially removed Toronto from its list of infected areas by the end of June 2003. The official response by the Ontario provincial government and Canadian federal government has been widely criticized in the years following the outbreak. Brian Schwartz, Vice Chair of Ontario's SARS Scientific Advisory Committee, described public health officials' preparedness and emergency response at the time of the outbreak as very, very basic and minimal at best. Critics of the response often cite poorly outlined and enforced protocol for protecting healthcare workers and identifying infected patients as a major contributing factor to the continued spread of the virus. The atmosphere of fear and uncertainty surrounding the outbreak resulted in staffing issues in area hospitals when healthcare workers elected to resign rather than risk exposure to SARS. Identification of virus. In late February 2003, Italian doctor Carlo Urbani was called into the French hospital of Hanau. It looked at Johnny Chen, an American businessman who had fallen ill with what doctors thought was a bad case of influenza, Urbani realized that Chen's ailment was probably a new and highly contagious disease. He immediately notified the WHO. He also persuaded the Vietnamese health ministry to begin isolating patients and screening travelers, thus slowing the early pace of the epidemic. He subsequently contracted the disease himself and died in March 2003. The CDC and Canada's National Microbiology Laboratory identified the SARS genome in April 2003. Scientists at Erasmus University in Rotterdam, the Netherlands, demonstrated that the SARS coronavirus fulfilled coaches postulates. Okay, coaches postulates are four criteria designed to establish a causative relationship between a microbe and a disease. The postulates were formulated by Robert Koch and Frederick Loeffler in 1884, thereby confirming it as the causative agent. In the experiments, macaques infected with the virus developed the same symptoms as human SARS victims. Oh, crap. All right. So macaques is a type of monkey.
Outbreak monkey.
Wait. No, see, you went there and my mind was not trying to mind went there.
No,
I was not.
You said monkey. We're talking about disease control.
Because I thought macaques, when they were saying macaques, I thought they were talking about a hospital or a lab.
Oh, yeah. So, I think that's what I was kind of into.
Yeah. That's weird. But hot links, so
yeah,
my mouse started saying, hey. Okay, macaques constitutes a genus of gregarious old world monkeys of the subfamily Cercopithecinae. I botched that all up. I know I'm probably not even close to pronouncing it right.
I heard Pete the cat.
There you go.
This little monkey.
Right. The 23 species of macaques inhabit ranges throughout Asia, North Africa, and Gibraltar. Okay. So, in the experiments, macaques infected with the virus developed the same symptoms as human SARS victims. So they infected. All right. I'm reading. In May 2003, studies were conducted using samples of wild. I said I was going to keep reading and didn't know. All right. In late May 2003, studies were conducted using samples of wild animals sold as food in local markets in Guangdong, China.
Didn't we just read the opposite of them admitting that it was not? We didn't just read.
They took this infection and infected animals with it.
Whoa. All right, I'm listening.
What was they think about it? What were they testing viruses and stuff on? If you think about it, they have always used animals.
They have to do anti-animal testing things now. So yeah.
Remember before they didn't have it. That's why we had the anti-animal testing, because they used to test on animals at high rates, and probably
Right.
still do in certain places, like you
Right.
read now.
Right. All right. The results found that SARS coronavirus could be isolated from masked palm civets. Okay, hold on. The masked palm civet, or gem-faced civet, is a civet species native to the Indian subcontinent of Southeast Asia. It is classified by IUCN in 2008 as, this is an animal. It looks like a raccoon. Even if the animals did not show clinical signs of the virus. The preliminary conclusion was the SARS virus crossed. Man, I need to go to school for science, because science class did not help me with this. The preliminary conclusion was the SARS virus crossed the xenographic barrier from Asian palm civet, which is an animal that looks like raccoons, to humans, and more than 10,000 masked palm civets were killed in Guangdong province. The virus was also later found in raccoon dogs, ferret badgers, and domestic cats.
So basically, they release infected animals back into population that infected other animals. That came in contact with the human population. Am I missing something?
No, you're not. I'm just reading. I'm just reading. It doesn't say when, but it says later it was found in raccoon dogs, ferret badgers, and domestic cats. In 2005, so somewhere between 2003 and 2005, they found it in these other animals. In 2005, 2 studies identified a number of SARS-like coronaviruses in Chinese bats. Oh my goodness. All right. Phylogenetic analysis of these viruses indicated a high probability that SARS coronavirus originated in bats and spread to humans either directly or through animals held in Chinese markets. This doesn't make any sense, because if later they found them in bats, but initially they found them in an animal, was it masked palm civets,
Raccoon dogs, and all
raccoon
these other
dogs, and
things.
ferrets, and domestic cats? Okay.
Domestic cats are around people, because
Yep.
people domesticate cats.
Yep.
Come on.
All right. Originated in bats and spread to humans either directly or through animals held in Chinese markets. The bats did not show any visible signs of disease, but are the likely natural reservoirs of SARS-like coronavirus. Okay. In late 2006, scientists from the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention of Hong Kong University and the Guangzhou Center for Disease Control and Prevention established a genetic link between the SARS coronavirus spreading in civics and humans, bearing out claims that the disease had jumped across species. Just want to throw out there, shout out to Doodoo Vision, because I can say some of these words like shoo. Appreciate you. In December 2017, after years of searching across China, where the disease first emerged, researchers reported that they had found a remote cave in Yunnan province, which is home to horseshoe bats that carry a strain of a particular virus known as a coronavirus. This strain has all the genetic building blocks of the type that triggered the global outbreak of SARS in 2002. Wait a minute. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's over 10 years it took them to figure. Okay. This strain has a genetic building blocks of the type that triggered the global outbreak of SARS in 2002. The research was performed by Shi Zhenli Cao Ji and co-workers at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, China, and published virology in China and published in Pylos Pathogens. The authors are quoted as stating that another deadly outbreak of SARS could emerge at any time. As they point out, the cave where they discovered the strain is only a kilometer from the nearest village. Date of contaminant. The World Health Organization declared severe acute respiratory syndrome contained on July 5th, 2003. In the following years, 4 SARS cases were reported in China between December 2003 and January 2004. There were also 3 separate laboratory accidents that resulted in infection. In one of these cases, an ill lab worker spread the virus to several other people. Study of live SARS specimen requires a biosafety level 3 (BSL-3) facility. Some studies of inactivated SARS specimens can be done at biosafety level 2 facilities. Animals. A small number of cats and dogs tested positive for the virus during the outbreak. However, these animals did not transmit the virus to other animals of the same species or to humans. Society and culture. Fear of contracting the virus from consuming infected wild animals resulted in public bans and reduced business for meat markets in southern China and Hong Kong. All right, I'm done reading.
So you just did all that reading.
I'm dizzy.
Yeah. Well, other than that, I mean,
So
I don't know.
what did we learn today, boys and girls?
Gather round.
You know nothing.
Yeah. Let's start with that. Let's go ahead and start with the Men in Black mind eraser machine.
So let me share what I just learned. Okay. I learned that
How to speak other languages, number 1.
Yes, I'm getting better and better at learning words and names, how to pronounce them. I'm going to keep practicing. But I learned that it initially was isolated to a masked palm civet that looks like a raccoon and that is indigenous to the Indian subcontinent of Southeast Asia. And that from there, it went on to infect raccoon dogs, ferrets, badgers, domesticated cats, and domesticated dogs. And that was before they realized that it all came from bats in a cave that visibly showed no signs of disease, but were the natural cause of the SARS-like coronavirus. But after doing testing on them,
hold on, you forgot humans. You forgot one part. Not to mention that they gave SARS to the raccoon-like animals and they released them back in the population.
Correct. In addition to the bats, it still hasn't been proven that those bats carry the disease. However, from 2002 to 2017, this has been going on. Interesting enough, the cases where a mother gets the virus, she passes away on the 13th. Her son gets it and passes away. No, she passes away on the 5th. She comes back to Canada from Hong Kong. When she comes back from Canada, she has contact with her son. She passes away on the 5th. Her son passes away on the 13th. Again, this is all happening from 2002 to 2017. There's no virus. There's no vaccine, should I say? There's no vaccine. There's no antibiotic that actually helps to cure this. But there are steroids and antibiotics that can help reduce inflammation. There reduce fever. I'm sorry, double cousin, would you learn? Because I'm trying to get to a conclusion. I need help.
I just felt like you were reading scenes from movies that they've already put out there. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, so, you gotta see when I put my little hand over the macaques monkey, you don't even understand. This is like Outbreak.
Yeah, no, for real. That's what I kept every time he said some stuff, like in between all the words that I probably wouldn't understand either, like trying to pronounce them. I'm like, yo, this is literally sounding like scripts, like the plot for the scripts that became films to show you what might be, could be, is be, it is be. I don't know. I just, you know me, I'm conspiring. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't like it. Keep your hands clean.
And it's crazy because the macaques monkey, it says it's a gregarious old world monkey. What's gregarious? Sociality is the degree to which individuals in an animal population tend to associate in social groups.
But this is my thing. How they gonna blame the innocent monkey-looking animal when they went out, got it, and shot it up with it and put it back out there?
Yeah, and the
was this during the no regulation times where it was like you can test on animals if you want to?
Yep.
Like they just animals.
The macaques monkey comes from the Circopila, the blah 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 monkey species, which is the baboons. You know, with the colors, the blue like thing on their snout with the red eyes.
Listen, the same ones that they always have in these movies that break out and infect everybody.
Yeah, pretty Amy.
Yeah. But this is my thing. How you make the poor little monkey the villain when he just out in the woods doing what he do?
Right.
He didn't say
even them apes in the Congo that snapped.
He didn't sign up. He didn't say, "Hey, come test me, give me some." No.
Yeah, there was no disclaimer, or what is it called? A release form for the monkey.
You're like, "Hey, you see them bananas? Check this out." No, none of that. None of that.
What is going on? That's not
telling you bats, and there's no connection to this coronavirus in bats. Yeah, again, it shows that don't take everything you hear as is. It's always best to do research. And even with this here, there's more research you can do because you'll come to find out there's 3 forms of it, A, B, and C. And that's a whole nother week topic, you know, but that's for further individual research. That there is scientific information. Whether you think it's a hoax or not, there is scientific information that's tied this back to animal testing in different areas. Hey, glad you made it back, Copper.
Copper.
Appreciate that. Sorry about that, y'all. Signal went down for a little bit, but I'm back.
No, right on time.
Man. No.
And Gabrielle was reading through how back in the 2000s that they gathered up some innocent little monkeys, gave them SARS, then put them back out in population.
Yeah, monkeys, raccoons, ferrets, and domestic cats and dogs, which I don't understand. You know what? Okay, hold on. How can positive testing dogs and cats have it but not infect other dogs and cats?
It don't work. You just answered the question. You answered your own question.
Ain't that how AIDS work?
You let these domesticated and tested animals back in population. They're mingling around other dogs that's in the neighborhood and cats. They come in contact with people. Remember, this is SARS. It's nothing but a respiratory virus. Don't cats and animals and all these things don't everything breathe? All mammals breathe, the last I checked.
Moses and I were talking about this a few days ago, actually, about why they show you, whenever they show you what the coronavirus looks like, or COVID-19, what it looks like, it's like this sphere with a bunch of little things around it, you know. Those are proteins, and they're called spike proteins. Those spikes basically imagine like a rubber ball with a bunch of spikes on it. It almost acts like treads. It latches on to things. Those spike proteins allow the virus itself to latch on to, let's say for this example, a human blood cell. At that point, it's able to enter the blood cell and reproduce until the point where that blood cell bursts, and they take the mitochondria and the DNA and RNA tissue out of, well, the RNA sequences rather, out of that cell that it just hijacked. Now, the spike proteins on COVID-19 are specifically ones for humans. Those proteins attach to other proteins that are in human blood. So that determines part of its behavior in how it reproduces itself and what kinds of tissues it latches on to. If that makes sense.
Oh, I just clicked on another link. I got a question to ask y'all afterwards. For real. I should have clicked.
You just said something now, come on.
Nah, it's about ABC. D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. Oh my goodness.
What about ABC?
Man, all right. So I clicked on the link, okay? Bird flu. And again, remember, I just told you, I realized today that influenza, flu is short for influenza. So with having that a realization today, and Epiphany got to talking to me, because, you know, I was trying to figure out what I learned today, and Double Cousin wasn't helping me. Bird flu, swine flu, dog flu, horse flu.
That's a movie.
Human flu. Those flus can be categorized under A, B, and C. The origins of them can be also categorized. The A flu, the A categories is specific to birds. The B flu is bad to okay, more words I can't say right. The B and C flu, okay, so basically A, B, and C for animals can be categorized as birds. The type of birds, basically, A, B, and C, and animals can be categorized to the type of birds in the regions that they're in. And I find it very interesting that they've categorized all these flus specific to animals. They've put it under A, B, and C. Regions are broken up into A, B, and C. So I guess that's my statement and my question. Hope it made sense.
Yeah, because the genetic makeup of regions A, B, and C would be different. Meaning that 99% of the DNA is the same, but that 1% is
Right.
due to region.
So they've also broken up these coronaviruses, these flus, these SARS. They've broken this up by ABC. They've also broken up the animals under ABC by region, by area, by place.
Mm-hmm. Basically, the same thing how you seen with the Sentinel and everything. It was the same process what they did with the animals.
Right.
Once you understand what it is.
Right.
Like I said, there's a whole lot of medical and scientific information. I mean, it's close to that time. If there's no more thoughts or anything on it, we can go ahead and start wrapping it up. Let the relatives go on about their day. And again, like I
Really?
said, what you had.
No, man, look, look, we definitely have to pay attention. Have more conversations, ask more questions. I'm not saying at all that this isn't real. That's not what I'm saying at all. But a lot of times, knowing that something is real and being aware of, I guess, what would it be? The effects or the outcome, and being more knowledgeable to me would calm me down. Having an understanding of its origination, how something works. You explain something to me, I'm calm, if that makes sense.
Well, that's most people. So why do you think it is that there's so much conflicting information on this to keep people confused?
Yeah, because again, a lot of people, you can look at it either way you want, and that's the individual choice. But me, I tend to simplify things. What's the government's job again? One more time, what's their job?
To protect the people.
So, if they know, putting the information out, this is SARS and da-da-da-da, look at just how people panicking and acting now.
Right.
So sometimes, I'm not justifying and saying this is what it is. Sometimes, wouldn't the government have to create something if it has to protect their own people from itself?
Yeah.
Just throwing another thought out there.
Philosophically, go ahead, bro.
Oh, no, go ahead, Kafa, go ahead.
No, I was going to say philosophically, that's called the Hegelian dialectic. You have thesis or a problem, in this case, a problem. Antithesis, which is the reaction to the problem. And synthesis, which is the solution that's already been planned out. Why did they have was it 800? Well, I'm page. I tell y'all that CARES Act was 883 pages or something like that. How they build a law, right? How they build a law that was? How did they write this thing up in a day that was 883 pages?
Oh yeah, Bones hit me with a double cousin yesterday. I clicked on that PDF link. He said, "Oh, yeah, we."
Yeah.
What link did you click?
that wasn't done in a day. That was there for a while.
Right.
I don't know the degree to which. Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry, Copper, but sorry for. We just read today when it was created. It was created back in 2003 because they knew this was coming. This is not fear mongering, none of that. This is just keeping it simple and looking at the information, the factual, provable information that's there. There is no cure. There is no vaccine. So they knew it was coming. They knew it.
Right.
So they had enough time to prepare a national plan on how to adjust to this. So the population doesn't turn on itself that you see happening in small areas. Trust me, it's happening. I know. So now imagine if they didn't go about it this way. Not saying it's what it is, just putting that thought out there. Now imagine if they didn't. Could you see the chaos? I done said it before. I ain't worried about the virus. I'm worried about people. How people react.
Right.
And that's why sitting down, taking the time out, researching and understanding the information, you said it before, it calms you down because you know what you're actually dealing with. You don't see it as, oh, somebody trying to do this, somebody trying to do that. No, you see it as, okay, somebody, they tested, gave some animal SARS, put it back in population, came in contact with people, a couple of people flew to particular places and put this in the population. If they're telling you back in 2003 that somebody from that area went to Toronto, you had somebody else that went to California, it makes sense why you have these outbreaks in New York, California, in these areas now. Because it was already introduced. Now, add that with a 10-year time period. We talking about 2003, 2004, it's 2020. So now you can see it had its time to work its way through.
Yep.
And now most likely, not saying it's true, most likely it's in everyone. So the best thing to do is isolate yourself, let it take its course and run at it. Then again, that's just a thought. Now, I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm looking at the information. And if I had to make a judgment off of what to do moving forward off the information, I can see that being a choice.
That's a fact. I remember everything that you get in terms of a solution to this, in terms of what the prescribed cure is, what the prescribed, and it is prescribed solution to this is, it's got to be on consent. You got to consent to it.
Right.
So if they put you in a situation where you begin to feel a certain way, they can come up with a solution and say, hey, well, we can make all this go away if you just do this one thing we wanted you to do the whole time that you didn't do. So we're going to make you do it. Go ahead and do it. Just relent. Give it up. Take a knee. And thou shalt be saved.
You know, it's crazy because
thank you for that, No, so
it's crazy because I had this conversation with y'all before. Told you I wasn't ready, but I had to be ready. And it's showing on this chart for this link when it's talking about ABC, the birds and the swines and the bees. This chart where it breaks down the 18 other SARS coronaviruses before coronavirus 19. I'm just saying.
So then again, I'm glad you said that, Gabrielle, because it goes to this point. It shows that they were already doing testing. How else do you think they got all this information and statistical data? They didn't get this from November to now, from 2019 to now. When you look at the scientific studies and the medical information, this stuff is going back to 2000s, 1990. You get what I'm saying? So it shows already that it was out there, introduced in population. They did the information. All right, this is the numbers that we got, everything we came back. This is the scenarios we had to deal with this. I mean, because regardless on how you feel, this is how it goes down. They're going to get the data. They're going to get the information. Now, that information goes to particular agencies that draw up a plan on what would be the perfect solutions to deal with this. Then the plans get on the table. And then they're going to look at the plans and be like, okay, which one of these plans is going to benefit the needs of the many? And that's what's going to get rolled out, whether you like it or not. Because if you put yourself in a position of leadership, wouldn't that be the choice you would have to make? Somewhere down the line, if you're dealing with a viral infection that there's no cure for, that has to take its course. I mean, let's be realistic with this. Isn't that a choice you would have to make?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And again, if you look at, sorry, just real quick. And if you look at human beings in our society, we tend not to make the choice on what's best for us. Sometimes we got to be pushed in that direction. Let's keep it 100. Some of us, you leave us up to our own devices, we get crazy.
So, all right, I'm looking at this chart, okay? And it has it broken down. And if I'm wrong in saying this, please correct me. But what we refer to as the H1N1, H1N whatever number, it falls under
Same family. Yeah,
Right.
it's all in the same family. The more you go, let's put it like this, you're gonna find out all these track back into one particular family. I don't know if that's something we can do on air, but yeah.
Yeah. No. You're right. But okay, so I'm looking at this chart and it has it by the subtype designation and the NA subtype designation. And then it's got it categorized where it affects, right? And so like the influenza A virus, which is the H1N1, but also the SARS, corona, all that blended in together. And that one is specific to ducks in Alberta. Then they've got a H2N9, that's specific to ducks in Germany. A H3NA, that's specific to birds, cats, dogs, and seals, and that's specific to the Ukraine. Again, they've got them categorized as A, B, and C, but also this one says the virus has mutated into many strains. So again, we're saying COVID-19, we're reading COVID-19, should I say, but we also need to take in consideration that means there were 18 different strains before the 19.
The things you learn when you dig and do research.
There's one specific, okay, let me just read this. There's one specific to the Maryland area, and that one is called H13N1. N6. There is one specific to Memphis, which is 81H11N9. Like all the, yeah, is there.
So think about it. By what you just read, wouldn't all these areas by definition be sentinel areas?
Yep. Massachusetts is H6N2. Specific, that one causes specific problems to poultry.
That they basically done map the viruses down to particular area and can tell you the differences between them by particular areas.
This is correct. They've got it broken down by Australia, Gurjeev, Maryland, Alberta, Memphis, England, Italy, Scotland, Hong Kong, Wisconsin, Ontario, Rostock, England, China, Brescia, Dutch, Germany, Australia, Canada, Massachusetts, Scotland, Ontario, Ethiopia, South Africa. Now they've got it, even though they've got South Africa, then they've got it specific to Ethiopia. Alberta, Czechoslovakia, England, Ukraine. But even in England, when it's saying England, it also has it, England has two of them, H3N8 and H3N2. Yeah.
So already, this is already in the worldwide population already.
Yep. So to me, and this is just me, it would stand to say, let's say, Bones, you've got whatever one, and I've got whatever one. And I go see you, and then yours doesn't really act right with mine. So now I'm sick.
So now you have a potential reason to tell people, like, listen, we got to stop the traveling for a little bit.
Yep.
We got to stop the moving around because the virus is different in individuals depending on the region.
Yep.
And certain regions coming in contact with this form of it and this form of it can start a mutation.
Correct. Which creates, yeah.
And we're saying this is based on the scientific information and medical information.
Right.
You know, and we're just using the information out of there that's presented.
Correct.
And like Carper Indio said, if you thinking they came up with all this overnight, 800 bills of an act, all these numbers overnight?
Listen, from 2002, and I'm reading this off of this is their information. From 2002 to 2013, they did lab and experiments and testing. From 2013 to 2017, they confirmed 916 lab confirmed human cases.
And this was when 2017 up to 2000, you say 13.
No, 17.
17. So by 2017, they already knew. It was already around the whole planet.
916 different cases. Now, those different cases have different, like, I have a virus, Double Cousin, you have a virus, Bones, you have a virus, Copper, you have a virus. So that's four.
Don't you put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby?
Okay, my bad. So that's 4 different cases, but those are 4 different viruses. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah, because they're different by region. They share the same pieces, but they're they interact with you differently by your region.
Correct.
Right.
So that's what is happening. So when they're talking about a virus coming from China, what is, I guess, not necessarily being understood is that the virus is reacting in a different region it's reacting in a different region. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, it's interaction with a different region.
Interacting. There you go.
Yeah, how it interacts. This form of the virus from that region interacts different with different regions. And depending where it goes, the symptoms and what it does is different.
Right.
To the point it's labeled by area. By using Sentinel, I mean, basically, again, not saying that's 100% what it is, just based off the information that's right there, that's researchable.
And just, I mean, keep in mind, again, since 2002, this has been going on. Just saying. So, I mean, we just keep doing what we do every
And
day.
the question of why there's a flu shot every year, look at it this way. If everybody is infected, but your infection is determined by the region on where you at. We move around every year so much.
Right.
And because we move around so much, there's constant different mutations. So there will always have to be some type of shot to adjust to the mutations every year, if you're looking at it from the scientific and medical information that's there. That part of it does make sense if you're basing it off of that information. Because remember, they say flu, but flu again is short for what? Influenza. You get what I'm saying? Influenza is what, a virus, right?
Yeah, I just learned that today. I'm telling
There's
you.
no cure for viruses, right? They take their natural course.
Yep.
So what they do is the flu, we know the flu is a small dose of, what is it doing? Helping the population speed up the natural course of it moving through your body to stop the chances of these outbreaks that just happened because it came to this one population that didn't have these parts of it. Not true again, certain populations, think about it, even with the flu vaccine, there's certain populations.
Kind of breaking up bones.
Small ones.
I'm sorry.
Might take one too. There's smaller populations when it comes to the flu vaccine that it reacts with them. Sometimes it can be deadly, correct? But generally, the larger part of the population, it just runs its course. And again, this is when you look at the scientific and the medical evidence that's presented. And there's like Gabrielle just said, this takes studies from 2003 all the way to 2017. That's how they was able to put this KISS Act together, because they already knew, again, what was coming, because it was here already.
Can I add something to that? If you are not ready to really understand what's going on, don't be clicking on links. You'll catch the chills and your nose will start itching. That's all I'm saying. If you ain't really ready, don't click.
Talking about us the detergent. Nah, it ain't.
Man. Man, my ear's still hot. Yeah, if you ain't ready, don't get to clicking. Don't get to reading. And if you have, if you're very visual and you have a really active imagination, yeah, don't. If you ain't ready, don't just don't.
Yeah, because believe it or not, you might think this part of the scientific study is deep. No, when you get down to all this read back to, and that's what I'm telling everybody, you want to know, do individual research. Yeah, like Sister Gabrielle said, be ready. Please be ready, because you're not gonna come out the same on the other end.
Yeah, you can't. And I say this.
Andy Dufresne out here.
Listen, you can't unknow what you know, and I'm laughing because it's all like.
And we don't mean that fear, and we do not mean that obesity. No. You will be well more educated on what's really going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's really happening. Trust me, you look at it like, okay, all right, I get it, because if you had to make that same choice, 9 out of 10 would make the same choice. Once you have all the information in front of you and you know why certain things are happening, you'll understand it better. And you'll understand why you just can't come out and tell the population. Trust me, you'll understand. You think you're out here acting crazy now. That's why some of this has to be individual self-research. You just can't come out and just That's why we say it pays to do
As long as you're
it.
breaking up. Breaking up. Every time you get to the good part.
Sound like you're sitting on the AC unit out back.
You ever do? Well, you know what? I don't feel like giving
Nah,
it right now. Never mind. I'll tell it off the show. Yeah. Things you learn as a child, real quick. Don't get too close to a fan trying to make funny sounds. It don't work.
We can do salutations while they attacking Bones Foon out here.
Yeah, what's that part on Friday where he put the hose to his lip? Get too close to a fan. He'd be mad.
You play too much.
Yeah, you play too much.
My fault. You did that on purpose. But yeah, salutations.
Salivation.
Because these, look, I can get mine now if y'all want, because hot mics is around.
What do you mean?
Look, all y'all play too much.
I'm in the minor leagues today. I know.
Hey, y'all got
Bones
y'all
got this.
Y'all got the email address. Peace, y'all.
You whack. You whack.
No, I'll go after you.
How you gonna throw the rock and hide?
Now look, just cut yours down to about 2 hours less than what you usually do, and we'll get out of here by noon.
You know what? Okay, I'm gonna make it quick. All right. Salivations. Continue on your genealogical journey. Don't stop that. No matter what. Know who you are so that no one can tell you who you are. It is important. To me, it is even more important now with everything going on. You want to know that. You want to know who you are. Pass that along to your children so that they know. Friends and family, pass that along. Knowing who you are is really important. It really, really is. No one can tell you who you are. Period. And whatever that genealogical journey takes you down, accept it all. It's all a part of you. It's all a part of you. And it's, regardless of what you find, it still makes up of all the events and all the people that came together to bring you to the knowing, so that you can pass that knowing, that information, that this is who we are, this is who I am, to your children, to your friends, to your family. It is important. Anyone telling you not to do genealogy, I'm saying they're wrong, because doing my genealogy,
I agree.
We are
challenging. All right.
Yeah.
And make sure your peoples is there.
We be on the corner and give it to them, but they don't want it.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interject.
Oh no, you're fine. I appreciate it. It's one of those things. Doing my genealogy, I became so much more than just a color scheme, if that makes sense, a shade. And I didn't find White Island, and I didn't find Black Island. Just saying, didn't find it.
Country I ever heard of. They speak English in Black.
Man, I'm trying to tell you. Exactly. The more I dived into my genealogy, the more I dived into my family tree, the more I knew, the less confusing things were. But also the world definitely got a little bit bigger and got a little bit more serious, along with other things. But it definitely gives you a knowing that no one can take from you. Once you know something, you can't unknow it. So once you know it, no one can take that knowing from you. Period. No one can tell you different because you know for yourself. Tell it to your family, share it with your family, share it with your children, because once they know it, no one can tell them different. You can't take a knowing away from someone. So yeah, do your genealogy. It is important. Know who you are so that no one can tell you who you are. Period. Someone want to say that you're from Black Island? No, I ain't. I'm just saying. Someone say you from White Island? No, I ain't. So yeah, know who you are so that no one can tell you who you are. Census Day was April 1st. You still have time to do the census. Census affects funding. Census affects change or lack thereof. Census affects programs. Census affects cities, communities, counties, and states. Census affects what we do, what we're able to do. Census affects what we're able to participate in, what we're able to access. Not doing the census affects what we're not able to access, what we're not able to do, what we're not able to participate in, what we're not able to benefit from. Still have time to do the census. And again, even though the decennial census, the 10-year census is here, the ACS census happens every month of every year, period. The ACS census selects addresses, not people. So if you get that census, that ACS census questionnaire, because there's a lot more, way more questions on that ACS census than it is on the decennial census. If you get that questionnaire, that survey, that ACS census, do that census, because you become a direct representative for your neighbors and for your community. So that is a responsibility that if we're getting that ACS census, we are responsible for what does or doesn't happen within our community. What gets implemented or doesn't get implemented. What funding gets received and what funding doesn't get received when we don't participate in that ACS census. Make yourself count so that you can count. Because at the end of the day, what our goal should be is to make things better within our own lives and within the lives of others. People may have different ideologies or I don't know if it's called opinions or whatnot, but at the end of the day, when you look around your community, you look around your neighborhood and you're like, dang, things need to be better. What can I do to make things better? That census is one of those things you can do. Participating, getting actively involved, knowing what's going on with your city council meetings. There are ways and things that we can do individually that we can contribute to make things better. So do the census. Anyone telling you not to do the census, I'm telling you the envelope that came to my house said it is required by law. Do the census. Anyone telling you not to do the census is potentially trying to take away from your table, from your children's mouths, from your mouths, from your family. Do the census. Because if you don't do the census, somebody else is and will. And if you don't count to make yourself count, somebody else is making themselves count so that they can count. That is one way that our voice gets out, by doing the census. There's many, just participating, the programs. Our voice can be heard in many different ways. We just have to choose to allow our voice to be heard. So with that being said, peace to the panel, peace to the chat, peace to the silent majority. Shout out to you, Double Cousin. Thank you for these wise words. Appreciate you.
You out here stealing show notes.
We
I ain't got nothing to say when it's my turn. Nah, I'm joking. I ain't never got nothing to say. It's all me, baby.
The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. If you get, give. If you learn, teach. We can't help everyone, but everyone can help someone. Service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth. Okay, so this one, okay. Because I think you'll like this one. Because at the end of the day, we need to consider that there are people. Okay, when you are dead, you don't know that you are dead. It's difficult only for the others. It's the same when you give excuses. And it has in here stupid, but I don't want to use the word stupid. It's the same for others.
Say that one more time.
When you are dead, you don't know that you are dead. It's difficult only for others. It's the same when you give excuses and you're stupid. But I didn't want to use the stupid word.
Well, you just did. But I got you.
The way I see it, if you want the rainbow, you gotta put up with the rain.
I hear that.
All my life, I thought air was free until I bought a bag of chips.
Would you don't like snacks?
You silly. Never follow. Oh, wait, no, not that one. Well, I don't know. Never follow anyone else's path unless you're in the woods and you're lost and you see a path. Then by all means, follow that path. We're so busy watching out for what's just ahead of us that we don't take time to enjoy where we are. If you want your children to listen, try talking softly to someone else. You are never too old to set another goal or to dream a new dream. And lastly, it may look like a potato now, but one day you'll turn it into fries and you'll want them from me. Or I'll want them from you. Peace to the panel, peace to the chat, peace to the silent majority.
Look, I'm gonna get out the way. Yeah, questions, comments, concerns, and/or corrections, please email us at autochthonousassembly@gmail.com. Click the Zoom link or dial in. Either way, we are here to answer questions, go over things. If you need help with business plans, the USDA grants and loans, the FSA programs, all of what we speak of here on the show, and that shows up in our forum. Sign up for the forum on the website, autochthonousassembly.com. And man, is it the weekend? It's Friday, ain't it?
Oh man, no, it's not. Wait,
it's Friday.
Today? No, it's
today
not.
Your birthday? What's today?
Friday.
No, it's not.
Friday, April 17th.
You guys are not telling the
all
truth.
These Fridays in a row.
No,
and
it's
then now
not.
we're here on Friday.
Hold on, no, wait a minute. What's today's date?
Girl, open the curtains.
I'm looking at, look.
It's Grand Rising.
I'm looking at a calendar. What's today's date?
It's the Grand Rising show.
Hold on, let me see a phone.
The day over with now.
Hold on, it's the 17th. It's Friday. You know what? Okay.
You're supposed to do a yard sale yesterday or something. Like, what's today? It's still the beginning of the day. So it's all right, Gabrielle. But yeah, peace to the panel, peace to the chat, all of y'all, wherever you're at, wherever you're listening from. In the future, if you're gonna listen tomorrow, later on, whenever you listen, peace to you too. Have a great weekend. Peace, y'all. Gabrielle stole my show notes. I ain't had nothing to say.
You got phone call.
Here comes the.
Well, I think I unloaded. I think I unloaded most of what I had today a bit early on in the show. The conversation before that, I found some resources that were eye-opening, and like Bone said, you know, we're not giving you this message to make you afraid. The last thing you need to be is afraid, because fear is not only what's been used to facilitate what we're dealing with, but it also serves to put us in a state where we not only are compromised as far as immunity and health, but we're also compromised in the sense of being willing to accept things we wouldn't normally. That's the point of this. And a lot of people didn't catch it, but there was a member of the president's task force, the coronavirus task force, that referred to what's going on now as an exercise. Again, I'm not making this up. This happened on live TV. And we have to understand if they're referring to this as an exercise, a live exercise, and those of you that have a military background know exactly what that means. If they refer to this as an exercise in the military sense, what is this exercise? What is the purpose of this exercise? What have we been shown in this exercise? These are the questions that we have to think about, that we have to ask when the time comes. But at this point, I will say that one of the lessons we have to learn is to not fear. As they refer to in the novel Dune by Frank Herbert, fear is the mind killer. The little death that comes through and seeks to destroy us all. If we pride ourselves in being free people, which is what the American Indian has always been, in body and in spirit, we have to not let fear undo us, because that is the biggest weapon used against us, fear. So I tell you the things that I tell you. The panel here tells you and reports things as we find them, not to make you afraid, but to make you aware. And you can take that knowledge and you can act accordingly. You can prepare yourself. You can take care of yourself and your family. So I don't want anybody to be too spooked about what I've mentioned, because we've gotten here, our parents, our grandparents, as we've done our genealogy, like Gabby was saying, we found a very large world of a whole bunch of different types of people, and they all made it here through plagues, through catastrophes, through social unrest, political unrest, through racism, through riots, through famine. We can get through this. We just need to be aware of what's going on so that we can be prepared. So, as always, I thank the panel for allowing me the platform to share the things that I find and to speak about them with the freedom that I have. And on a lot of platforms, as you can tell, people don't have as much freedom. They're much more censored. So that is a larger and larger blessing and an honor every day. So thank you all for that. And thank you all to the listening audience for taking the message, getting the information, going further with it, doing your own research, verifying what I say or what any of us have said here, and make your own decisions. Thank you all. Enjoy the weekend.
All right, Confident Indio. And once again, thank the panel, the chat, and the silent majority for another great Grand Rising show, because it takes all three parties coming together to make this possible. In this rising, I would like to leave out with this. I'm going to use a term that the majority, everyone, those who agree, those who don't, can identify with. Americans. It's something that we all consider ourselves to be. And as Americans, we are all at this moment, right now, individuals that make up communities. And in these communities, we must remember, it does not matter what you believe. When it comes to participation, really, if your ideology is that you are more and that's the community that you in, that's your choice. But you should still participate to make sure the people of your community and their needs are met. To participate in the census has nothing to do with your personal individual belief. Whether you be a Christian, Muslim, Jew, participate because you represent a community. And the one thing that we all share in common as Americans, there's people of grave need in our communities. And like our brother Copper Indio said before, history has shown this is not the first time we have been in these situations. But it should teach us these are the times that we need to put our ideologies and personal beliefs aside, because we all represent communities that are affected. Whether you believe it's a hoax or you do the research to see what it is, they're still affecting our communities. And as Americans, the American Indians, and those who descend from foreigners, who all identify as Americans, we have a responsibility. First is not to do this to ourselves, not to turn on each other, but to take the time out to realize when we act responsible and calmly, we can get through anything. And my American Indian brothers and sisters, that's part of our culture, that at times of great need, we don't turn our backs. That's the time that we stand and shine the most. So remember, it doesn't matter what you believe. The community that you represent as an individual has needs. So continue to research to find out what programs that you can use, Americans, to fix your communities. Find out what resources you can get. American Indians, urban Indians. Because at the end of the day, we all have a part to play. We can't complain about the government when we are the government. And we get the government that we deserve when we do not act. If we want acts, again, if we want acts that become law,
then there needs to be an action. So to all Americans, embrace genealogy so that we all can unravel this confusion. So we all can have a better understanding and respect for one another's cultures and history. Because we all been lied to, not just the American Indian, not just the misidentified African Americans, the Spaniards, the Iberians, the Europeans, the Africans. We have all been lied to. But we can find our way out of this through genealogy, to realize we all have a common connection as human beings, as individuals. We all represent communities. So until we link up again to the next Rising Show, remember we love you, and peace.
Peace, everybody.
Peace, everybody. I got one.
You're always fishing.
It just made me think about it when Bones was just talking. Bones brung this one up. This coming from memory. What do you say to someone who has two black eyes?
Duck. I don't know.
Nothing. They've already been told twice.
That's messed up. Peace, y'all.
Peace.
Enough electoral votes, more than 270, more than enough to become the 44th President of the United States. He will be the first African-American President of the United States.
I've been broke all my life, but I kept hope all them nights. You see business in my city? Yeah, they closed all them twice. I was just riding down Salem, all them damn potholes, I can't drive. I know y'all can fix it faster, but I know y'all won't try. Don't nobody care about us, and that's why I don't vote. Voted for Obama back in 2012. I remember that's when I had hope. He was saying, yes, we can. And everybody got less food stamps. And when I turned 21, I was still broke. I'd never vote again. I don't think I ever had a president make my life better. Did it all on my own. Ain't no politician ever do a nice gesture. I don't even know the mayor's name. I ain't never seen her one time ever. Tell me how she gonna help the city. What I'm supposed to do, write letters? What I'm supposed to do, blame Trump? He ain't never really gave a ain't nobody raised minimum wage. None of these jobs pay enough. I think they just want to keep us broke, cause they ain't putting none in place for us. This how all my people feel, but we gotta learn. We complained enough, let me change it up. Everything I just said, everybody I know think the same way. See, they don't want to see us vote, and we never do, so we see the same thing. But all our votes really do count, and they'll never really let it show. So now I'm finna break it down, cause if I don't, you would probably never know. First thing first, you know back in middle school when they taught us, it was 3 branches of the government. We forgot it when we got older. It's the judicial, the legislative, and executive. But all we know is the executive. That's the mayor or the governor and the president. Now none of them 3 people make no laws, they just be checking them. The laws come to their desk and all they do is say no or yes to it. So when the news station tried to tell us that Barack Obama couldn't put us on, we was all salty at Obama when it was the Congress members all along. We gotta focus on the legislative branch. Yeah, they the ones that make the laws. Yeah, they the ones write how much food stamp money you get on the card. But when people that wanted to help us wanted the job, I know they probably lost. Cause we ain't even know their name, we ain't know their face, we ain't know it all. So the Congress or the State House, that's legislative, they make laws. So what we want from the president is what they do. Okay, y'all? See, they election every 2 years, but we don't ever even go to those. The Congress, they can raise minimum wage, but we ain't even really know it though. So you know how back in 08, when we all voted for Obama, we was all supposed to go back in 2010 and vote for the Congress. Cause they the ones make child support laws. They the ones choose if your kids at school get to eat steak or corn dogs. The State House make the court costs. So if the country failed, then you can't say it's them, it's your fault. Cause y'all ain't know to vote for Congress members that was for y'all. And they don't gotta leave after 4 years, and we just let them sit. See, they don't wanna tell you this, they want you to focus on the president. Now the 3rd branch is the judicial, that's judges. They the reason why John Crawford and Trayvon ain't had justice. So when Meek Mill got locked up just for popping willies, we blame the judge and not the city when they let her get voted in. Cause they ain't know who to vote against. Imagine life on the other side. Roads better, schools better, everybody get their license back. Grocery store food better, custody of your kids back. Homeless people get new shelters. If we gon' fix the U.S., we gotta start with them 2 letters. Me and you, somebody told us that the government wanna keep us broke, but the only reason why those people in the government is cause we ain't vote. And I ain't talking about the president, I'm talking about the ones we ain't know. See, they was gonna try to keep it low, but it's gonna hurt them when they see the pros.
Every time you stay home, someone is making a decision about you, making decisions about the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food your kids eat, and how much money you bring home every 2 weeks. So every time you sit out an election, every time you don't show up because you think it doesn't matter, someone else is happy that you didn't show up, so they can make that decision for you. Vote.
Enough electoral votes, more than 270, more than enough to become the 44th President of the United States. He will be the first African-American President of the United States.
I've been broke all my life, but I kept hope all them nights. You see business in my city? Yeah, they closed all them twice. I was just riding down Salem, all them damn potholes I can't drive. I know y'all can fix it faster, but I know y'all won't try. Don't nobody care about us, and that's why I don't vote. Voted for Obama back in 2012. I remember that's when I had hope. He was saying, yes, we can. And everybody got less food stamps. And when I turned 21, I was still broke. I'd never vote again. I don't think I ever had a president make my life better. Did it all on my own. Ain't no politician ever do a nice gesture. I don't even know the mayor's name. I ain't never seen her one time ever. Tell me how she gonna help the city. What I'm supposed to do, write letters? What I'm supposed to do, blame Trump? He ain't never really gave a ain't nobody raised minimum wage. None of these jobs pay enough. I think they just want to keep us broke, cause they ain't putting nothing in place for us. This how all my people feel, but we gotta learn. We complained enough, let me change it up. Everything I just said, everybody I know think the same way. See, they don't want to see us vote, and we never do, so we see the same thing. But all our votes really do count, and they'll never really let it show. So now I'm finna break it down, cause if I don't, you would probably never know. First thing first, you know back in middle school when they taught us, it was 3 branches of the government. We forgot it when we got older. It's the judicial, the legislative, and executive. But all we know is the executive. That's the mayor or the governor and the president. Now none of them 3 people make no laws, they just be checking them. The laws come to their desk and all they do is say no or yes to it. So when the news station tried to tell us that Barack Obama couldn't put us on, we was all salty at Obama when it was the Congress members all along. We gotta focus on the legislative branch, yeah, they the ones that make the laws. Yeah, they the ones write how much food stamp money you get on the card. But when people that wanted to help us wanted the job, I know they probably lost. Cause we ain't even know their name, we ain't know their face, we ain't know it all. So the Congress or the State House, that's legislative, they make laws. So what we want from the president is what they do, okay y'all? See, they election every 2 years, but we don't ever even go to those. The Congress, they can raise minimum wage, but we ain't even really know it though. So you know how back in 08, when we all voted for Obama, we was all supposed to go back in 2010 and vote for the Congress. Cause they the ones make child support laws, they the ones choose if your kids at school get to eat steak or corn dogs. The State House make the court costs. So if the country failed, then you can't say it's them, it's your fault. Cause y'all ain't know to vote for Congress members that was for y'all. And they don't gotta leave after 4 years, and we just let them sit. See, they don't wanna tell you this, they want you to focus on the president. Now the 3rd branch is the judicial, that's judges. They the reason why John Crawford and Trayvon ain't had justice. So when Meek Mill got locked up just for popping willies, we blame the judge and not the city when they let her get voted in, cause they ain't know who to vote against. Imagine life on the other side. Roads better, schools better, everybody get their license back. Grocery store food better, custody of your kids back. Homeless people get new shelters. If we gon' fix the U.S., we gotta start with them 2 letters. Me and you, somebody told us that the government wanna keep us broke, but the only reason why those people in the government is cause we ain't vote. And I ain't talking about the president, I'm talking about the ones we ain't know. See, they was gonna try to keep it low, but it's gonna hurt them when they see the pros.